Hey everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Morgan. Those of you that know me know I'm a speaker and therefore I travel, and I always travel United, and I have for my entire life. So today we are talking to a very special guest. Our guest today on the show is Oscar Munoz. Oscar served as the CEO and chairman of United Airlines. He was previously in several executive leadership positions at train companies CSX, AT&T, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, and more. He serves on the board of directors at Salesforce, CBRE, Televisa, Univision, and Archer Aviation. He earned his bachelor's degree in business at USC and an MBA from Pepperdine University, which is not far from my house. To date, he remains the only person of Hispanic heritage to run a U.S. airline. Oscar and I are talking about his new book, Turnaround Time, Uniting an Airline and Its Employees in the Friendly Skies. We talk about the CEO's role in customer experience, and the importance of talking to both employees and customers, and so much more. Please enjoy Oscar Munoz. Oscar, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. I am so excited you're here all the way from toasty Florida. How's your day going so far?
You know what? It's late on a Friday before a holiday, and I couldn't be more delighted than to be speaking about the concept of customer service. So thank you for the great work you do in that area.
Yeah, it's interesting to be sitting here with you because, you are someone that through your work, you have touched like millions of people, which is an interesting position to be in. And I'm a frequent flyer with United. Like, it's very surreal for me to be sitting here with you. But I had the chance to read your book, Turnaround Time, your new book, and I was really captivated by your story, which I did not know. I did not know that you grew up in Mexico with your grandmother, and I was shocked to read that you basically were somewhat homeless. That was very devastating to read. Can you just talk about your young childhood, how you were raised, and how that shaped and impacted your worldview?
Yeah, thanks. Well, you know what? Let me take that concept of homeless back. I very specifically say that while I was living with my maternal grandmother, because my mother had come to the United States to sort of find a life for herself and therefore for me. But in the Mexican heritage, the concept of familia is such that you're never without a place to call home or be feel like at home. So we did travel around from friends and relatives over the course of my first 8 years. And with my maternal grandmother, her name was, well, I called her Mama Josefina, and a huge inspiration. You talk about how that time in my life shaped me. You don't know it at the time, but there are these dormant or latent values that are sort of, inscribed in you by the people that you grow up with. And this was the kindest, most hardworking, um, friendliest, the kind of person that you want around you all the time. And I saw her in very difficult times. I mean, we traveled all over the country and again, sometimes didn't have everything that we needed, but never saw her in any way, shape, or form blame anyone or blame anything in her life for others. She lost her husband at a fairly young age due to cancer. Interestingly, he was a what's called a fireman at a locomotive shop for a railroad in Mexico. And part of my career took me
Yeah.
to CSX here in the States, where I became president. And so I didn't know that about him until just recently. I saw an old picture of him, but asbestos got him. And so she had a lot of issues in her life, but never once complained and ended up her career working as a maid at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas, where she, I'm proud to say, still on the wall as one of their annual Hall of Fame sort of employees. And so I always tell that story because where you come from and the values that are inscribed upon you do seem to carry through, and it's made my entire career at different times when I had a really difficult point in time, looking up to sort of see what she would say, and she's always been a great inspiration.
So, because you talked about CSX, let's actually just dive into that point in your life where you had so much success there. I mean, you're an interesting person, Oscar, because you have a math and finance background, but you're clearly also, strategic, you've got the charisma for a leader. And so there you really had a ton of success. You boosted operating income by 600%. Tell us about the Cinderella strategy that worked for you there and just what that time in your life was like.
It's funny. Everybody, I think we're all looking for that magic amulet that we can rub, and it's going to take our life, our career, the things we want to do, and just make them, exactly what we've always imagined them to be. And as you know well, life just doesn't work that way. There's nothing secret about the things that I do, which is why I finally wrote the book to say I'm just a regular person from regular beginnings who had the great fortune to have people in his life guide him at different strategic times that led me to a different path that was beneficial. To people that cared about me at times in my career to to sort of give me proper feedback, if you will, as to where I could straighten up the way I was doing things. And then there's a concept that comes from my grandmother where, yes, hard work, yes, collaboration, and importantly, doing things for the right end objective with everyone in tow, as opposed to for your own personal grandeur or agenda or adulation. And all of those things are the combination of my life. And again, I've had ups and downs like everyone else, but predominantly I just worked hard. And you're blessed by an ability to think in a different way that comes with your DNA to some degree. But you can hone it in a way and balance both the EQ and the IQ to a degree where people actually like working with you. And again, as you said, I was a finance guy, which then an ops person, and I learned a lot there about how to manage and deal with people. And then, of course, eventually rising to the point of being a CEO, which again is a great honor, and be part of an industry where a lot of those skills, actually were helpful in turning the company around.
All right, so let's switch back to your experience in the airline industry. And in your book, you talked about the fact that the airline industry is really a bellwether of the world. From a customer experience perspective, just considering what's happening with airlines, what do you think that the airline industry can teach us about what is happening from a customer experience perspective in the world right now?
Oh gosh, that is a deep question. And I'm not sure exactly where you want me to head with it, but I think, the airline industry is something like at United Airlines, we fly to over 70 countries around the world. So the concept of multiracial, multi-ethnic, it's embedded in who we are. Our organization is so diverse and so diversified in so many ways, and so we live it every day. If you go to any airport in any country, including any state and city here, you're going to find that. And so the first thing you'll learn is cultures are different, but and we have a concept of the friendly skies that we try to teach all of our folks. I think that seems to translate across all cultures and backgrounds. If you teach it right and if you exemplify it right, it can make a big difference. And so you also learn that, that we had a concept when I first started at the company about developing what I called a shared purpose. Some people call it mission and vision and values, and all of those things are important. I spent probably close to a year, um, in essence, interviewing thousands and thousands of our 100,000 employees, and getting them to tell us what made their life at United so special, or why did they work there? And it was varying words and thoughts and thematics, but as you boiled it down over time, and brought them along the journey to develop this shared purpose, it was all about connecting people and uniting the world. So you ask what can be taught or what can be learned is the connecting people was not so much as you as a passenger going from point A to point B, and that's how we connect people, but understanding that people like you and so many of our 180 million customers, they're not traveling from point A to point B just to travel. They have a reason. You're going to a fun event, a funeral, a fun event, a wedding, or potentially even a serious one like a funeral. But everyone has a purpose, and when you're connecting folks, you should understand that that human in front of you has his or her own life, and we should embody everything to make sure that person is happy and friendly. And again, that's very overdone, but concept of not just a number, but an actual human traveling for a special purpose. And then the second part was uniting the world, was certainly the fact that we travel to so many different countries and we see the good of everyone. We don't see the war. We don't see the nastiness in the media. We just see really human people, just like you and I, from different countries traveling to visit family. And that alone gives you an incredible hope that life on this world and this planet can be more unified because fundamentally we grow up differently in different countries, but again, we care for our children, we care for each other, right? And all of those things come to mind. And it was a really wonderful experience that we had at United because it really brought those 100,000 people closer and closer together. And when we unveiled that thematic, people felt like they were part of it. And so I think, that concept of being one in this planet and in this country is something probably that at least I would purport to be a really interesting sort of aspect of the industry.
So when you joined United, it was a really tough time. It was after two companies merged, and you sort of inherited a little bit of a mess. What do you think, in your perspective, just in your time there, why is the airline industry just such a tough industry? Why is it not smoother and more consistent? Why is it so tough?
This is the part, and I spend a lot of time talking to folks about this because it always sounds like you're defending or providing excuses. Um, I think it's helpful to understand that a lot of the issues that we face when we travel are not necessarily the fault of any one person or any one airline or any one airport. Um, there are so many factors that get involved. You travel a lot, you see that. Weather is not something, the person in front of you at the gate or on next, your flight attendant can actually manage or change. The concept of air traffic control and its outdatedness in this country that really inhibits those things. There's so many people involved in the process that it's multiple issues that affect you. We have learned over time in the industry that we can certainly begin to point fingers at others, but no one really cares because all you care is that, hey, I paid you to get me from this place to this place to my event, and you didn't get there, and I'm going to be upset. And there's a function of our industry that has to absorb that and understand that, it isn't fair, but we indeed did contract with you to get you to a place, and we'll try as mightily as we can. And it's, so the difficulty is there's a lot of moving parts. Like I said, 70 different countries, 180 million customers. There's 1,000 planes in the air at any one time. Those planes and those paths of those aircraft are planned literally 6 months previously. So the flight that's showing up or is scheduled to show up at a gate to pick you up and take you where you want to go, that path and route has been planned way beforehand. And then you've got to coordinate all the wonderful logistics of catering and flight attendants and pilots to arrive, along with all of our customers to arrive from whatever traffic and parking situation they have. So if you boil it all up into a wonderful little circle, it's a flurry, and it's difficult, and it's the most exciting thing that I've ever had a chance to be involved in because it is so hard and it involves such critical systems and technology, systems and procedures that you have to do, and then add that the friendliness of someone to take care of you when things are going right or wrong, and then you boil that into that. It's not a it's a difficult place, and then not mind you, of course, then you have regulatory oversight and politics. Who every time we're delayed, everybody jumps out of their woodwork and wants to regulate the company and all that. So it's a complex, interesting world, but the people in it, this is the best part, have a lot of pride, a lot of professionalism, still want to help you and be friendly and take you where you want to be. And most importantly, we just own all of that and try to make the best of it when times aren't exactly perfect, which unfortunately happens more than we care to.
So, Oscar, my audience, they are interested in customer experience. And one of the interesting things that I've seen in the last few years is the topic of customer experience has up-leveled into the boardroom. So now more CEOs are making it part of their agenda, and it's just getting more attention. So for any leaders that are watching that are either currently CEOs or want to be CEOs, what would you encourage them to do if they want to start to block and tackle and make some have some success in customer experience. What should CEOs be doing when they think about customer experience and how to improve it?
There's 1,000 books written on this. I'm sure you speak
I'm
about it,
writing
and a
one right
lot of.
now.
Exactly, exactly. And the examples of what people have done, I think first and foremost, you actually have to believe and understand genuinely that your customer is important to you, and you really do want to understand their point of view. We live in such a smart world with so much information, and we're told that, this is what customers want, and we follow that lead, sometimes blindly. I would say, as a suggestion, is uh, check check the concept. In my history, check the data just a little bit. I mean, I've been in parts. I was part of Coca-Cola when they switched from one product to the other. Remember the old classic Coke went to new Coke and all that. This was back in the day, probably well before your time. But the research all said that people liked the new Coke. The research did not ask the human aspect. It's like, yeah, do you want this versus the old Coke? Nobody ever asked that. So, yeah, I like that. Terrific. I'm not going to buy it because I like the old stuff, right? And that list goes on and on and on. And so, for leaders in that business, check your data. And then, as much as you can, and again, this is my personality, I like to see, touch, and feel things personally in some way, shape, or form. So, get out, talk to folks. Don't send people to do customer focus groups. Yes, do that, but understand that when the data comes out, it has to be interpreted. And there's a lot of marketing technology about how that works, but I like to talk in my stories and how I do it. I think probably a good example is I wanted to understand a lot more about my customers. As you said, we took over a pretty disenfranchised organization, and everything was broken. So trying to figure out what to fix first was really critical. So for me, with customers, since I flew a lot, I said, you know what? I want to talk to customers as I'm flying. I mean, not in an overt, sort of way that got in the way of their experience of just flying and relaxing, but how to open up a conversation. And so my team would, before I took off on an aircraft, they would hand me a stack of paper this big about all the customers that were in wherever I was around me where I was sitting. Usually there were business customers, so it was all about the contract we had with their corporation, and all of this stuff that had no merit, right? I mean, I couldn't engage. So we built what I call the Oscar app, and it was a simple system where on my phone I had the people sitting around me. I had their name, rank, and serial number, everything that you provide, so there's no privacy issues. But what I had them add at the bottom was, well, a couple of things. If they've taken a customer survey recently, was it a smiley face, a frowny face, or a really angry face, right? Just an indication. If you and I are sitting together and I see, okay, it's Blake Morgan, born on this, has all this, great. But I can immediately see whether you're generally happy or unhappy with our service too. And then what I added to give a little more clarity, I wanted the last 5 flights that you've taken. And oh my God, there are people trying to figure out. I said, I want to know how their last flights went. And well, how do you define what a good flight is? I said, listen, do not spend a lot of time on this. I want a red, yellow, green aspect. If it was delayed by 3 or 4 hours, it's probably a red. If it was delayed by 5 minutes, it's probably a green or a yellow. It doesn't matter because this is how I'm going to use it. When I say hello, hi Blake, you over some time people get to know me, so they know I'm asking these questions, and then I would have this information. I said, hey, thanks for flying. I see that you're generally a happy customer, but hey, I see this flight that you took, in late June from LAX to New York, and on my thing it shows red. That's all I know. But I'm asking you about a flight that you just took a few weeks ago that didn't go well by our standards, and I'm asking you what that might be. And so, a couple things. One, people are blown away that someone who's the CEO of a company is engaging in a conversation, a friendly one. And then, as the friendliness continues, I ask you specifically about that flight. And the fact that I know about it, the fact that I know it wasn't good from our perspective, and then willing to get your take on it openly opens the door. So I have the greatest conversations when I get that, because a lot of people say, it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, we were a little late, but your people were really friendly. That's a good conversation. Or no, it's a completely sucked. Here's what happened. this didn't work, you didn't do this, but it just opens up that the aperture where we're talking as two human. You're not complaining. You didn't encroach upon my thing. I asked you those questions. And so that's a long story, I know, but that's the level of involvement and engagement you have to exhibit, in my opinion, to get to the level. If you're truly a customer centric, customer service business, how do you get to know your customers in that way? And I'm telling you, those conversations that I had over the years carried far and wide. And importantly, the information I received back was so critical because sometimes you're offering someone new Coke and all they wanted
Yeah.
was the old Coke, right? And that's just an example and a story of how advice I would give.
I think part of the challenge of at least the airline industry is you're dealing with a traveler that mentally, it might not be your fault what they're going through. So you're not, sometimes you're their therapist. You're not just taking them from A to B. I mean, so many flights I'm sitting on and somebody gets up because they can't do it, like they're sick, but I wonder, are they having a panic attack because they don't like to fly? Because so many people, it's not just about the transaction and getting the customer from A to B. Like how do you train employees to deal with a customer that is not always clear-headed?
Yeah, that's uh, so. Again, you you cannot train this. If I had a magic machine when I was interviewing for any role in an airline that could just test for one simple question, and that question would be, do you like people?
Yes.
Because if you don't like people, this is not the bit. No systems, no technology, no coffee, no filet mignon. Nothing's going to help that person deal with what you just said, right? People bring their entire life to you and they're in an enclosed place and the proverbial stuff rolls downhill and we
Yes.
take the brunt of it. So how do you train that? So a couple of ways. You win the hearts and minds of your employee and you make them feel part of a shared purpose or a vision. You involve them in the turnaround of the company so they feel part of it. So they actually feel inclined to listen to you and understand that you are having a bad day and it has nothing to do with me. And that last phrase, if you talk to our most senior people that are customer facing, and I tried to put them in front of the younger people all the time. It's like you have to understand when somebody's yelling and screaming at you, it ain't about you, right? They're not mad at you. You've done nothing wrong necessarily. Something in their life went wrong. I always famously said, it's like, the problem with flying is that by the time you get to my airplane seat, you're pissed because you went through traffic, you went through TSA, you went through this. It's like your Starbucks line was around the corner or whatever it was. And by the time you finally sit down, you just don't have a lot of empathy and caring left, and you want somebody to take care of you. So you don't teach it, you embed a feeling of involvement in people so they want to deal with that. And then you let them know that it's not personal. And then more importantly, you listen to them and provide them the tools necessary to deal whatever. What are those tools? Well, first and foremost, you run a really efficient airline that's on time because that's the
Hmm.
worst thing, right? It's like when you have to make your people apologize for things they do not control, it's
Yeah.
awful and it gets old. And so
Yeah.
it's a whole array of things that you've got to do to get the heart and mind and discretionary effort of a human to take care of another person. So the training is really, I always called it, just, proof, not promise. It's like I would just provide, what do you need? What is it that we're missing? What is it that we're not doing right? And then fix those things. And then they felt part of the equation.
One of the big surprising things for me about reading your book is, to be honest, that you're a real person, that you're a real person, and just reading and hearing your voice, like in
Yeah.
2017 when the whole thing with David Dow happened, and just so much rage and like just so much noise, and then to like hearing your story and that you had a heart attack and about your family, like it just really paints the picture of a real person. So I mean, looking back, do you wish that you were more vulnerable publicly at that time or with employees? Do you think that would help a CEO that's going through some kind of difficult time to be more vulnerable?
Um, uh, well, there's a phrase I've learned over the course of my book tour that I'm not sure where it came from, but it's not mine. But that trust travels at the speed of vulnerability, and
Hmm.
I just love that phrase because um, in that particular situation, for me, I always enjoyed talking about it because it was a learning moment. It was a massive failure on my part to communicate effectively. But it's never too late to do the right thing, is what I come out of it. And so the initial phase of that particular issue, all the facts point away from United. It wasn't United employees. It wasn't, you have, I have lots of reasons why I can tell you, no, 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 you shouldn't be mad at me. These are other people out here. But no one's listening to that. They're watching this horrific video of a human being, getting assaulted, for lack of a better term. And my first reaction, because of all the people around me trying to get me to say the right things or getting us to say the right things, was the
Yes.
absolute wrong thing. Quickly pivoting to a very highly watched TV show, where I was put on the stage to try and make amends. And the initial phrases and stuff and responses that I was asked to respond with, it just wasn't part of me. And back to our conversation about my maternal grandmother and those latent dormant values that was instilled. Middle of the night, I got up. I was on my knees looking up and just saying, I'm in a world of hurt here. What am I going to say? My company, the brand, myself, my heritage, all of these people that because we were just coming out of the darkness at United, and here we go back again. And, it was this calming influence to me that got up in the morning when asked the question. I said, it was horrible. And
Hmm.
I let the policies and procedures, get in the way of doing the right thing for another human being. And it was not what anybody expected me to say, my team or the producers on the other end who wanted
Right.
somebody to begin pointing the fingers. And so, that vulnerability is what I learned to show maybe a day or two late. And what I always ask folks to do, it's like, think about what's happened. Um, it's a world of just really quick acting, right? It was the first big Twitter blow up in, I think, corporate history. So have that distinction. Gee, good for me, right? But at the same time, I think the concept of it's never the act, but the cover up, I think it's what people get turned off on. And what happened should have never happened. It was our fault. Should have said that right from the start. The fact that the individual was not a particular stellar human being and all of those things that, kind of trickled out was just the wrong thing to do. And so, a couple of days later, you fix it and you move on. And the learning is it's never too late to do the right thing.
I love that. Yeah. So it's great to read your book, and I encourage everybody listening and watching to pick up a copy of Turnaround Time because it really paints the picture of a real person, a real human being, just like all of us. So it's been interesting hearing your perspectives on customer experience leadership, and I do want to get to know you a little bit better on a more personal level if you're ready to do some rapid fire. Does that sound
Always.
good?
Sure.
Okay, so I don't usually ask this question to my guests, but I really want to ask you for the first question of rapid fire. Do we really have to put our seats up and our tray tables up when we land, when we take off? Why do we have to do that?
It's a safety aspect. If something goes wrong on the landing and people have to vacate, if you've ever been part of a scenario where you cause panic and ask people to leave, it's really it's really maddening. And so the
Okay.
concept is to vacate the space so when people need to exit, they're not going to run into things.
Okay, I'm glad I know that now. I promise to be a better customer, all of you United flight attendants in the future. All right, second question, Oscar, what does your morning routine look like?
Oh gosh, I travel so much that sometimes it's trying to wake up, and then sometimes it's waking up too early. I always, first and foremost, I think it's an important part of anyone's life is I get my life. I used to be a big runner. I ran marathons, and those were the times for me where I got my life straight and organized so wonderfully. So I get a little older, that's harder to do, and as I travel, it's harder to get up, all that. So my morning always involves certainly I don't drink caffeine or coffee, so a morning stretch, a yoga routine, or some level of workout where I can. And then I begin to answer, honestly, I go right to work because of the time zones, my family, my friends, all the businesses. So I cover a little bit of that right off the bat to be responsive. But mostly I do anything I can to put on a face that is inclusive, that is non divisive, that's collaborative, and that is smiling to give, it's like, I have a friend who I always ask, how's your day going? Because I'm trying really hard to not anyone ruin a perfectly good day. And so I try to be that person and get myself in the mode that when the first time somebody sees me, they smile, they feel warm, and they feel generosity. So it's getting yourself ready for what is going to be, a day that's probably not going to be completely easy.
So you are not retired.
No, I'm failing retirement, if indeed that's what.
All right, now I'm going to throw this rapid fire question in. What are you doing right now? What's your new job?
Broad scope, I have several boards of directors where I serve as chair of committees, serve as head of all these things, and great industries from tech to commercial real estate to investments to some startups in the flying car business. And it's just wonderful areas of interest that I have. I'm a special advisor and executive advisor to several other startups in the health organization and in the health area, predominantly heart because of my background having had a heart transplant. And then, a lot of philanthropic events that for me, there's a level of inequality in health, in economics, and then, of course, the inequality we face in a world that's divided. And I do a lot of work in that space to just bring my voice. I have bridged gaps of differences of opinions in everything I've ever done in my life, whether it's unions and management or customers, all that stuff. And so I feel that I have enough ability now to bridge some of those gaps. So I lend my name and voice to many of those things to sort of bridge those inequalities. And those are the things that I do, and I do them across the country for several different organizations. And so that gets a little, a little harrowing time-wise, but it's a great energy that I get from being able to assist and help and give back, for lack of a better term.
So let's talk about relaxation. It's really important now that you have had a heart attack. We got to make sure you relax. What do you do to relax at the end of a hectic day?
Oh, many things. Physically, I do a lot of different things. Sports. I love to golf. I think probably for me, the most relaxing thing is being in the water. I'm a surfer from way when I was a little kid, and so anything in the water just really, actually, it just brings everything out of me. And honestly, I like to laugh. And this will sound silly to most, but I watch things like TikTok, and I giggle myself to sleep, and it's the most wonderful feeling. And so again, days are tough. All of our lives are not easy, and we've got many things. But I think anything that makes me relax and laugh, which is for me, water and the ocean in particular, is a big sort of thing for me to get myself slowed down.
So, what is your favorite place to visit since you visited everywhere?
I love places that, so I never, it's hard to claim a place. It's kind of like your children, which one of them is your favorite? And you never, you never answer that question. I like places where the people that you see every day, that you see in your hotel if you're traveling, or a restaurant, or in a car, or in the park somewhere. There's just a life enriching sort of spirit that certain countries have more than others. And
Hmm.
I love to visit those places, understand their culture, involve themselves in their life. It really is a special thing. And the thing is, there's so many special places. And interesting, there's a lot of special, incredible places right here in the United States. I mean, my life
Hmm.
takes me all these different places wherever I can. I'll go for a little run or walk around, stop at a coffee shop or a stand, and just talk to folks. And it's just fascinating to hear sort of their take on life. And it's not always, it doesn't always align with yours. But it's, again, back to my concept of listening to people and listening to customers. Listening to other human beings is a wonderful sort of activity that I think all of us should embrace at some point in time, especially when it's different than our views, because we tend to get sort of embedded in our own our own view of life, and not often let others in to see theirs.
Hmm. If you could have lunch with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
I've always marveled at Abraham Lincoln's ability to, his book, the team of, I forget the exact, uh, he has a great book about, banding together his cabinet of all his opponents in the political world and bridging them together and making them work together. And I love that concept. And he just seemed like a person that was charged with such a difficult task of building bridges and bridging a nation. And again, regardless of your politics, the ability to forge company that was being stood apart back together, I think is something I still marvel. I'd love to get his viewpoints on some of this stuff.
And lastly, if you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
You know, uh, you, there's an old Rolling Stone song that's one of my favorites. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. And that's for me just a phrase that's always in a song lyric that's always resonated with me because you can't always get what you want, but you know what? You can do a lot of things, and the things that you need come about some way, somehow.
Well, Oscar, it is such an honor to meet you. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. I really appreciate you being on the Modern Customer, and hopefully you'll come back next year and tell us about all the cool things you're up to.
I'd be happy to. Just need the invite.
All right, all of you have been tuning into the Modern Customer podcast. Pick up a copy of Turnaround Time. Until next time, thank you for listening.